Welcome to everybody for joining this seminar. And we'll be diving into evaluation and design for our town, which is a community-led initiative aiming to build well-being and positive mental health across a 10-year horizon. But before I begin, I'd really like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which I'm standing right now. So I'm coming to you from the land of the Wurundjeri people from the Kulin Nation, who've cared for this land for over 60,000 years. It's hard to comprehend. So we're coming from this ancient land of Australia for anybody who's from other places. But I would like to also acknowledge any First Nations people who are joining the call today. Okay, so my name is Jess Dart, if you don't know me, and I'm the founding partner for Clear Horizon Consulting. We're based in Melbourne, Australia, and we specialise in evaluation. And we're all about using our somewhat nerdy, Melinda, I'm assuming, nerdy male skills to really equip communities and change makers to achieve more impact. And I'd also like to acknowledge the other partners here, because we're going to be talking today about Our Town. And Our Town is a project in South Australia that's funded by the Faye Fuller Foundation, who are a partner in this change, and also supported and implemented by the Australian Centre for Social Innovation. We have Jess de Campo here, who'll join you shortly, and also Clear Horizon are the evaluators. So there's the three implementing partners, but the really important partners are the 6 towns. So there are 6 towns in South Australia, and we're actually really lucky today to be joined by Emma. I would give a wave, Emma. So Emma's from one of the towns, so she's from Cummins. But the other towns who are key members of this initiative are Ceduna, Mid-Murray, Kimber, Kangaroo Island, and Cummins. What have I missed? I'm trying to do this by memory. I think I've got Mid-Murray. I've got Mid-Murray. Yes, they're the towns. So if any of the towns are watching, welcome, and we acknowledge you and all your work as well. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we dive in to the rest of this exciting seminar. And this is, by the way, just so you know, I've been on leave for about 3 months. And so we're going to do this as a little bit of a live debrief about what's been happening. So this is unscripted and pretty authentic little conversation between us about what's been happening. And I'll be hosting it for once. So I'm not going to be playing the role of content expert, more as facilitator today. So a little bit of housekeeping. So for those of you who haven't been to one of our webinars, it is in this special format so that the guests, you can do 2 things. There's this Q&A function. You see that at the bottom. So you can add a question there at any point. If you see that somebody has a question that you want to answer, you can like it and it will move to the top. And we'll make sure we answer the ones that are prioritized. But there's also the chat function. So if you want to add any chat in as you go, we encourage you to do that. Okay, so as you know, this is being recorded. So your faces aren't on there. It's only the panel members. So you can feel safe in eating your lunch or doing whatever you're doing. You're not going to be videoed. Okay, and the other thing to note is that if any of your friends or you think this is good, the link will be shared and the video will be available after, and we'll post that on LinkedIn. Now let me think. I think I've got everything. Yeah. Okay, so mainly the next thing to do is to introduce who we have on the panel. So let me start. Let's start with you, 2 Jesses. So this is, might be a little bit challenging, and we're both Jess D as well. So I'm Jess Dart, and we have Jess de Campo. So Jess, tell me something, and this is not, I haven't warned you about this. So
oh God.
tell us something little about you, like something that you loved when you were a kid, just so we can get to know you.
Oh, Jess, a question without notice. Hi, everybody.
I want you to do that.
That's right. Something that I loved as a kid, I was a super book nerd. So my younger sporty sister was always wanting to play outside, and I always loved reading books. That's my little Bob.
Right. Fantastic. So Jess leads our town from the TACSI crew, from the support crew. So next, I've already mentioned Emma, but I'm going to do the same to you, Emma. So if you can come off mute and tell us something that you loved when you were a kid, maybe, so we can get to know you a little bit.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Emma. I'm coming in from Bungala Lands in Cummins today, and I loved blocks as a kid, loved building things, seeing how tall I could make them, breaking them down, building again. Yeah, I was really into building stuff as a kid.
Excellent. Thank you. The builder. Maybe you're still building today, hey? Okay. So, and then from Clear Horizon, the evaluators on this initiative, we've got Mutsumi and Melinda, but I'll start with you, Mutsumi. Something that you loved when you were a kid.
Thanks, Jess. As a kid, I loved eating and food, and I still do. So that's something that's never changed. Yeah.
Fantastic. And how about you, Melinda?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Ooh, as a kid, so we lived on a bit of a little hobby farm, and we had a creek in our backyard, and we had little frogs in the creek. And I used to love just wandering down to the creek and collecting frogs, and then bringing them back to the house and terrorizing my mother with them. So
I love that. I'm going to think about that for a while now. I used to like to collect spiders and put them in matchboxes. So I think I was a bit like you. And
sounds
I
about
did
right.
like books. Yeah, and food. So maybe I'm with all of you. And building blocks, why not? Why not have it all? Okay. So now that we've all get to know each other, let's dive into talking more about our town. So actually, if you're okay, Emma, I'd love to hear from you first. And just to let people know your role, what you call it's called the Cummins Guardian. Is that right? So we'd love to know what that means. And also maybe your take on our town to kick us off.
Sure. So we created my role as the guardian for our town, Cummins, so that we would always have somebody that was looking at the overall picture. I think we found that with everybody wanting to do specific roles and focus in specific areas, that we still needed to have someone that was, coming along to meetings, being a presence and someone to talk to the media about different things. So my role is really like a link between we have a core team and a working team. So the core team were the people who for the last 2 years have been doing the discovery and trying to learn from our community what were the biggest issues that we had in mental health in Cummins. And we didn't want to lose that. We still wanted to keep that real strategy sense when we employed people, because we knew as soon as we got into the ideas and where we wanted to roll with that, we'd get super excited and just go down that path and maybe lose a little bit of that. So trying to have somebody that had the knowledge of the last 2 years, had already built some connections and networks across the other towns as well. We thought it would be important to have that person I guess kind of weave a little bit between everyone. So we have the support team, which is TACSI and Faithfuller and Clear Horizons. But Cummins did something a little bit differently when we set up too, in that we selected a project partner. So I am the link between the project partner and our working team as well. But, our town has been a massive thing for us here in Cummins. It's not something we'd ever seen before. We knew we had issues with mental health and still do. And the biggest thing that made us want to apply for this in the first place was we weren't the same as the national statistics or even the state statistics around what we were seeing in our community. The last 3 suicides in Cummins were all young ladies, and a lot of the grant funding that was available to us was around men, Indigenous and youth. And so when our town came along, it was place-based, community-led, it had all of these things inside of it. That meant that we were going to build capacity within our own community and have people on the ground here learning those skill sets of how to actually create change in Cummins. And I think too, I really loved the whole idea that it was trying to come up with something that would be sustainable post the funding running out. So having that mentality the whole way through of, okay, whatever we do here, how are we going to make this sustainable? How is it going to be a long-term project that long after the 10 years of funding is gone and over, that we've got people always thinking about that in the backs of our minds? You're on mute, Jess.
Oh, thank you. Fantastic. That really gives us a sense. And so, just to clarify, you're employed. How many of people are actually salaried members of Cummins team?
Yeah. So after we had a look at our plan, we broke it down into sections and focus areas. And so we decided to have one person employed as the guardian that was sort of helps to link that team that did all the discovery to the new working team. And then we've got 4 sitting within that space working on ideas. So there's 5 of us employed in total, and we're all part-time. So I do 3 days a week. 2 others have just increased to 2 days a week each. And then the other 2 are doing 1 day a week.
Fantastic. And I might just pass over to Jess de Campo to just talk about it from a different perspective now, if that's okay, to talk about it from the sort of TACSI implementation partner perspective. But for all of you guys listening, if you have any questions for Emma, remember that you've got that Q&A function. You can add the questions in so that you understand what this is all about. But I'll hand over to Jess now.
Thanks, Jess. Number 2. Thanks, Emma. So I suppose from TACSI's perspective, TACSI's been involved with the communities and with the support team sort of since the get-go. And I think that the reason why TACSI's playing a role across the 10 years is just recognising that, you know, communities like Cummins and teams like Emma's have really listened to their own communities and identified some really knotty and really foundational problems, some really big things that are they're influencing well-being in their communities, you know, things like division and connection and belonging. And so really what TACSI's role is to be there alongside communities and alongside the other members of that support team organisation, and to really provide support around a way of working for towns that's going to enable them to get at some of these really knotty root causes, and to develop really exciting ideas and opportunities that they feel like will address them. So I suppose the TACSI's bringing that methodology and that way of working that's all about testing and learning, tools and methods for listening to and working with community. It's got a big focus on curiosity and embracing failure. And I suppose it's just really trying to provide that kind of rigorous and new way of working to support towns in the vision that they've set out to achieve. And so the design of our town is that, as Emma said, there's the community teams, there's an advisory group which is made up of folks with lived experience, people from rural and regional communities, as well as alongside sort of experts in mental health and wellbeing. There's this quite unique collaboration across the support team of the 3 partner organisations. And there's also a big part of TACSI's work is helping to sort of seed a network that actually involves all of those different groups, but is really led by the communities themselves. And certainly the vision with our town is that over 10 years, the support model from Clear Horizons and TACSI's over time will transfer to being much more community-led. So there's quite a big injection of support in these early years of the initiative, but it's there's a big recognition that through that kind of networked way of working, and as town teams really take the reins with the ideas and work that they want to take forward, that organisations like TACSI will be able to step back, because the capability and the vision is really then will be held in community, and that communities, the 6 towns, will really be supporting each other as much as anything. So that's a bit about us. We work in sort of a coaching model with all of the communities, do lots of town visits, and like I said, work really collaboratively with Clear Horizons and Faith Fuller to wrap that support around the communities and all the awesome stuff they're doing.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jess. And for any evaluators are listening, you'd be excited to know that evaluation was included right at the beginning, like for 10 years. This is the only 10-year contract we've ever had. So we're very excited about this the length of it, but it's sort of got two components, which is the overarching evaluation framework and then the support for communities to do their own. But let's start with the overarching evaluation framework. If you could just briefly talk about that, Melinda, without getting too technical, maybe.
Sure.
Big.
Yeah. Thanks, Jess. And Mutsumi, please, and Jess as well, please feel free to jump in as we go. So as Jess mentioned, there's really two kind of big pieces to our role as evaluators on the Art Town project. One is at the initiative level, and one is then coming alongside towns in more of a coaching capacity to support their capability building around evaluation so that they can start leading that. Similar to the TACSI model, our hope is that they can down the track lead the evaluation work. But when we think about evaluation at the initiative model, it's really stepping back and thinking about the goals of the initiative as a whole. So as Jess mentioned, it's this addressing mental health and well-being in rural communities. It's about capacity building. It's about community-led initiatives. And it's also about influencing. So there's an influencing strategy. So how can we support others in the philanthropic sector to take on and do this work as well? So from an evaluator lens, there's quite a bit to look at and get your head around. But Mutsumi and I, and Jess as well, kind of the primary elements of our evaluator role at the initiative level is one, doing developmental evaluation. So really being a critical friend in key spaces, coming alongside meetings at TACSI, coming alongside meetings at Faith Fuller, and kind of poking at things, asking some questions that help folks get rigorous in their thinking about what it is that they're trying to achieve and how. A role that we play in DE at the initiative level is also about creating space for reflection. So oftentimes in projects like this, things move so fast that we don't take the time to intentionally pause, step back, and learn from whatever just transpired. So that can look like when Jess gets back from a trip to KI. I'll go, hey, Jess, let's find an hour. Let's sit down. Let's do a bit of a debrief. And we use the method called Orbit. And Jess and her team will walk through a series of questions just to really capture that experience and then think about what are the implications of that for how we move forward. We're also thinking about shared measurement. So not only looking at towns individually, but capturing the experience of the initiative across towns and how might we measure change at the initiative level in that way. So that's really just a kind of high level snapshot of what evaluation looks like at the initiative level. It also has to do with building tools. So we created the initiative level theory of change, which we're really using as a tool in this space. And a bit of framework as well. Happy to talk about the town level work as well.
Let's just maybe we'll hear from Mutsumi. Just maybe you could start painting a picture of what it looks like at the community level, what the evaluation looks like at the community level.
Yeah, thank you. So with regards to the supporting towns with evaluation, our role is not to evaluate what towns are doing or how they're going. It's more about developing that capability. And I think there was some questions in Q&A, but regarding that sustainable capability building. So it's really about, yes, there are some elements of helping with tools and things like techniques and things like that. But we're really focusing on that evaluation thinking. So regardless of the tools and things like that, techniques, we're more interested in really planting the seed of that way of thinking to capture impact, to capture learnings, to share learnings, all those things. In more tangible way, what we do is we help support towns develop things like theory of change. And again, back to think kind of like not just tools mindset, like it's often quite common, I think, for all of us to be so kind of the whole idea is ingrained in our psyche that whatever we do in terms of like with funding, we have to show the outcome like within 1 year or within that set very short time frame, because funding arrangements are often arranged like that. Like there's 12-month funding, 2-year funding, and you expect it to show the outcome of that within that time frame. But like theory of change development, like we kind of really in a way we were really showing how to take a step back and think about the big picture change rather than what you might be able to see in short term, being able to demonstrate within very short time frame. So that's one of the things that when speaking about evaluation thinking, and in terms of developing tool or that is theory of change. But also there are other things like really kind of helping with developing that evaluation thinking through more structured way. So we have this Clear Horizon has this Clear Horizon Academy, which is the online learning platform. What we've done is we've taken some contents and things like that, and Melinda and I and Jess really kind of turned that into more format that is more appropriate for our town, rather than the contents that's actually developed more towards service providers and government agencies and things like that, which are the kind of the bulk of Clear Horizons Academy's clients, customers. So what we've done was we created this online sessions, and we do run weekly virtual sessions, and where we really try to make it more applicable to towns, what towns are doing, rather than again, try to cram in all the jargons and technical kind of things. I guess we still do. I have to admit, we still sometimes revert back to all the jargons and all the nerdy things. But we try to stay away from that, and it is a constant learning for us as well. So we constantly learn what works, what is not working in terms of that running that training or academy online contents.
So I might just, if that's okay with you, Mutsumi and Melinda, because Emma has been the receiving end of all of this, yeah? So she's been on the receiving end, I assume you'd never done any evaluation training or things like that before. So
No.
So give it to us, Emma. What was it like to be on the receiving end of a particular, and tell us a bit, especially how the theory of change stuff went, what you think of that and how it went.
Yeah, so I guess the first thing is none of us have ever done anything like this before, and we were absolutely completely green in this area. Obviously, we've thought about evaluation, and we've run surveys and done different things to try and capture data, but did we have a real process behind that, or did we know why we were trying to capture it or what that actually meant? Probably not. I feel like the Academy was and is an amazing resource for us because it's all video recorded, which means that whilst I attend all the Academy sessions, I can then share that back with the rest of our team so they also have that level of learning. In Cummins, what we have done is when we started looking at the theory of change, because it is so broad and it's looking at, okay, what do we hope to see at the end of this initiative? So if we get to the end of the 10 years, what has been our process to get there and what do we want to see change in our community? And obviously most of what we were working on was very initiative or very idea-based areas. So we had to start to think more broadly, like instead of being so specific to the idea, like if this were to work, what would the impact be more broadly across the whole community? I think that the theory of change is a fabulous tool for us to be able to talk to our community, because we can share with them not just what we're doing, but why and where we hope it to get, like where we hope it will eventually lead to. So I feel like it's a really good tool for our community to be able to share that with them. I also, in Cummins, we created a reflection week. So we do those 4 times a year. We started asking some of the questions so that typically you do something and you work on it for 12 months and then you try and think back what actually happened. Like it's very hard to go back and really capture those learnings. So that was something quite quickly in the process of doing the evaluation work that Cummins brought to life in our community and we started doing. So we will quite often go to Clear Horizons and to TACSI and just say, hey, this is where we're at. We feel like we need to know a bit more about this. What are some of the questions we could be asking ourselves to get that information out? So We've just done a reflection in the last couple of weeks, and what's great about it is that we're not going to then keep going down the same path. If we've got something a little bit wrong, we can make change straight away. So we're learning by doing. That's one of our principles with our town, is that actually as we move through this process, if we're doing something and it's not quite working out, we can pick it up as we go rather than go the whole 12 months. But we're trying to capture little changes. So we look at most significant change or most significant learning that we might be seeing in our community, or we might be seeing a change happen that we can actually go back and have conversations with people and dive into that a little bit more deeply with the support of the core team to sort of capture what we need to capture in those moments.
Oh, that's fantastic, Emma. You're really painting a picture of how the Cummins and other communities are actually holding the evaluation, using it immediately in their work. So as you see about our town is pretty special, is that the communities are doing their own evaluation. But there is a bit that Clear Horizon do on top of that at the initiative level. And there was a question about that. So we also sort of do developmental evaluation or process evaluation, but we do it in a sort of collaborative way, don't we? And with the attention. So I just love, Melinda, just if you could just briefly explain how that works and how the towns are engaged in that.
Yeah, absolutely. So every year, Mutsumi, Jess, and myself engage in a process evaluation, and it's kind of a high level look across the initiative at how are things going. And we're in the early years in the initiative. This is year 3, year 2. And so still a lot of learning taking place year 3. Thanks, Jess. And so what it looks like from our end is Mutsumi and I do most significant change and most significant learning interviews with both the town guardians from each of the towns, but then hopefully 1 or 2 other core team members from that town, so that we can get hopefully a diverse cross section of perspectives at the town level as to how it's going, what we're learning. We also do interviews with all of the support team members. So everyone from TACSI, everyone from Clear Horizon, and then from the Faith Fuller Foundation. As Emma mentioned when she was talking, our principles, and they are community-led, learning by doing, seeing and acting on the big picture, and help me out, team. There's one more.
Mentally healthy practice.
Modeling mentally healthy practice. Leave it to the American to leave that one out. And so we also send out a survey to everyone just to gauge how we're going against our principles. These are something that we all came around in the early days. As Jess said, eval was centered from the get-go. So checking in, how are we going against our principles, and how are we seeing our partners? So how is town seeing support team going against the principles? How is support team seeing town going? So we bring all of that information together, and Mutsumi and I present it back to towns. I think what's the most powerful piece of this is the intention setting that comes from the process evaluation. So we do both as a group, but then also individually. What did we learn from this process? What does it mean for our work, and what are our intentions moving forward? And then we build an accountability mechanism that helps us connect with and be accountable to those intentions throughout the year. So every 3 months, the support team regroup around our intentions and have a conversation about how we're going. And then the MEL champions within the academy are trained to do the same thing in their town. So as Emma was saying, that MEL is really about the learning by doing piece in our town. It's about how do we gather our learnings, how do we gather data, whether that's number or stories, to in real time pivot as needed, or expand as needed, or pull back as needed to have the greatest impact in our work. So it's really, that's one thing I love about it, is it's MEL as a tool.
Fantastic. Well, I might move us all in. I'd just love to just spend a few minutes as a panel, all of us together. Maybe we can all think about this. Is like, what are the key things you're learning? I mean, we're early days, first couple of, it might be 3 years for the initiative, but for the towns it's not, because that includes the selection of the towns. So what would it be, Jess? Is it 2 years for the towns now? Yeah, and in a way they're only just establishing, so that's something to note. So what are we learning about, you know, evaluation and theory of change in this sort of space? So maybe I'll go to you first, Jess.
I think for me, I mean, I'm not coming from an evaluation background, you know, either, but I think that what I'm learning is just the huge crossover between the support that social innovation combined with evaluation can provide, and just how useful it is in terms of the coaching that we're providing as well. So I think I'd echo a lot of what Emma said in terms of just the immense value of theory of change, whether it's for storytelling purposes or prioritizing where we're spending energy and effort, as a tool for reflection along the way for us. And I think particularly for me, a learning has just been around the value of measurement and evaluation when we're supporting towns to prototype their ideas, to test them out at small scale, just how we're starting to be able to get quick and easy feedback on what's working and what's not. And we can then better support towns to continue to evolve their ideas towards their vision. So yeah, heaps of learning for me. And I think that those two approaches actually sit beautifully side by side.
And we probably get even better at it over time, right? We just, because I guess we've really brought them together so closely before. So some learning there as well.
Yeah, it's quite unique.
Anybody want to bounce off that? Any of the panelists or something different? Who wants to go? How about you, Mutsumi?
I just wanted to, I noticed that there was a question around, sorry, I'm just going a little bit, I'm not really responding to what Jess said, but I'm just like, noticed that there was a question around whether our town is looking to any similar work around the world to see what had happened and what worked. And yeah, so that's, I was going to say that yeah, as part of our support in the, during the first year, there was a literature review that was prepared for, to feed into kind of plan development around, like, I guess, community-led change, kind of literature review around community-led change kind of stuff. So that's that. And we're also actively on the lookout for yeah, similar initiatives. There's we've actually recently presented in a kind of network, and we about mental health, community mental health, and we kind of got to know about just a very similar initiative in the US. I think it's Texas, I think it was. But yeah, so we're always on the lookout for similar initiatives and learning their learnings and sharing our learnings.
Great, thank you for answering the question. Back to the panel discussion. So what have been the key learnings, or what's been challenging? Let's get into the nitty-gritty here. Melinda, come on, I can rely on you. What has been challenging?
I think we talk a lot about just the time horizon of this project. And, you know, not only is it a 10-year project, but there's so much, I don't know if volatility is the right word, but things change, right? Like, we know we've had COVID for the past 3 years, has caused some real challenges and interruptions in this work and made us rethink certain aspects of a project that is so about community interface. What does it mean when we can no longer gather together? What does that mean for how this work might need to pivot? What does it mean in the context of climate change? What does it mean in the context of, you know, upcoming elections? So I think just having to be flexible in the context of everything swirling around us. And I think one of the things that we've gotten pretty clear about, especially in the last year or so, and Mutsumi, please jump in on this if I'm missing something, but it's just the importance of really moving from thinking about evaluation or theory of change or MEL framework as it relates to a specific activity or a specific activity stream, as Emma said, and really about pulling back and grounding in, know that it's really about what are the conditions that need to exist within our towns for this to be successful. So, you know, the activity theory of change and MEL framework is great on a 1 to 2 year horizon, which are the grant cycles that we are typically working with here. So it makes sense. But what does it mean to actually go, no, this is about the conditions. This is about the root causes. This is about the enablers. And how do we build the theory of change that speaks to all of those underlying conditions that are going to support our ability to, you know, reduce drinking, you know, greater engagement of marginalized communities. So
really hard stuff, isn't it? And I guess at the beginning, people just went first to, oh, well, let's do a men's golf day. When we say activities, it's like people got busy, and it was like, We have to look at the bigger picture. Did you experience that, Emma, or did you find what was challenging around that?
I just wrote down not trying to rush and solve something and wait and let it emerge. I think that was one of the hardest, most challenging things that we had as community, because in small communities, something happens, you react or you respond to that. You just straight away go into action. It's what we've always done. But I guess at the end of the day, what we're doing here hasn't worked. And so we had to really think about things with a different lens, and we had to look at it and come up with a different approach. And the social innovation process really was around, you know, we want to engage our community and we want to learn what it is that we could do differently. So we need to be open to just listening and hearing what is being said and not try and solve those things. And I think that's been one of the hardest things for us who are leading this project is how do we just sit back and let good ideas emerge, or if things aren't, you know, working how we would like them to work, how do we then go back and start to allow others space to come into that and to come up with a different narrative around how we could possibly change things. And I think for our team, particularly in the discovery phase, that was really, really hard, not to go straight to action, but to actually sit and get those voices that perhaps aren't normally being heard in our community, and bring them to the table.
Thank you so much. And we're soon going to go over to the session where we're going to answer participants' questions. But I just wondered if anybody else wanted to share any learnings, anything that was challenging about trying to do evaluation in this space before we do. Go, Mutsumi.
Yes, I was thinking it's about also that of power, like so obviously we come from very specific disciplinary backgrounds, and we have certain knowledge system that we bring in, but really letting go of that, thinking that sure, we have certain expertise, but so do everyone else, and really kind of try to let go of that, thinking that evaluation needs to be done this way, because that's the way we've always done, and that's the way our disciplinary knowledge system tells us to. So it's more about really letting go of that, some of that, thinking too.
I'm hearing a sort of a trend across what you were all saying about slowing down, and like when you've got this time, expanding into it, slowing down the evaluation too. Yeah. Jess, did you have any challenges, Jess de Campo, that you wanted to add in before we go to the questions?
No, I think that's good, Jess. Certainly challenges in terms of, you know, what we're learning with the social innovation coaching approach. But I think that Melinda and Mutsumi have spoken, and Emma have spoken really well to some of the more sort of Mel specific ones. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Well, now we're going to move to your questions, to the participants' questions, and see if there's any there that we haven't answered yet. Because I know some of them have been answered by text. If you might check at the top, you'll see that Jess has been responding to some of them, but some of them we haven't yet. So does anybody, our panelists, see any question that they would like to address? And we've also had a few questions that came in before the panel, so I might point them at you as well. So shall I just fire away? I might direct them at you. How does that sound? So I get one question we got, and maybe this is sort of Jess de Campo and Emma can start with this, and maybe Melinda can comment on evaluation. It's like, how much workforce development or capacity building is needed for communities to set up to work in this way? Is it more or less than you expected? Let's start with you, Jess. Yeah.
Oh, you start, Emma. You'd have a better perspective.
What do you think? How much capacity building or skilling up is needed to do this sort of work?
In Cummins, in all honesty, we had a group of volunteers already working in this space. So we've seen what's been happening in our community, and we were already actively creating change here. But it was huge. Yeah, so myself and another person were employed a couple of days a week, but the volunteer hours that have been put into all of this so far has been absolutely huge. But I think people are here because they want to be here, and people are here because they want to see change. and we were kind of doing it on our own before. So now having this level of support and now having some funding that we can put towards wages. And I noticed someone had a question earlier about, you know, the employment side of things, and everyone in our team did come from a background of lived experience, and that was a part of why they were sort of employed in that space as well. But they were already people that were invested into putting time into trying to come up with solutions in mental health and trying to find ways to connect into ideas or connect with other people that might have had experiences that we could learn from or grow from, or just feel less alone. So I would say capacity building, just talking from myself individually, it's been really huge. So learning about social innovation, learning the process, learning about the evaluation and the process there has been a lot, but it's been really, really beneficial. And I think what will come from this is that when this project does end in 10 years' time and there is no more funding, what we've got is a community of people that are actually have capacity to then in other areas within our community do the same process and come up with change in that space too. And also I think that we do have 3 on the Eyre Peninsula. So we're really blessed in the sense that we've got a network right here quite close to us that we can all work together towards different projects or share our learnings more broadly. And that's what we all want as part of our network, is to share what we're learning. We know that we're blessed and that we're privileged that we're in the space that we sit. And so our hope at the end of this is to have something really tangible that we can break down and share with other communities that might have similar issues, where they can look at what we've done and see how we've done it and what it's cost and things like that, and be able to replicate that in other communities.
That's fantastic. That's really clear. I think we've probably answered it. So yeah. Oh, did you want to add something, Jess?
No, I was just going to say that's an awesome answer, Emma. I think that covers a lot of it. And I think, yeah, with the social innovation particularly, but probably also with the Mel, like a lot of it is about questioning and shifting mindsets that we all hold from other ways of working that, you know, we're much more used to than sort of this new approach that we're trying in our town. So I think we have to expect that that is going to take a long time for all of us to shift into like quite a different way of working, you know, within community as well. So yeah, I think it's a big lift in these early few years, but already you can see, you know, huge capacity development in all of the towns, and much more towns sort of supporting each other now than, you know, even a year ago.
I was going to just add to that. I mean, just last week alone, I had 2 folks from Emma's team just reach out to me and say, hey, I built this theory of change. What do you think? So talk about a shift from the early days, everyone getting together, learning about theory of change, me doing the prompting, Mutsumi doing the prompting, like, hey, let's meet about this. And then for both Rhiannon and Liz to, you know, flick an email and just say, hey, check out this theory of change. And just to add to what Jess was saying, like a big heavy lift of our work in these early days is demystifying Mel, right? We come in and there's a lot of preconceived ideas and assumptions about what Mel is, and rightfully so. I mean, it can get so technical and so jargony, but I think
jargon. Mel, what does that mean again?
I know, right? Exactly. And so I think Mutsumi and I have just been really mindful about staying in that DE, that evaluative headspace, that first and foremost, it's about how we think in an evaluative way. But then also leveraging the skills and lived experiences that exist within these towns. As Emma said, there's already so much noticing, observing, designing happening. So how do we harness that and build some structure and tools around it so that the Liz's and the Rhiannons can continue, you know, teaching others?
Now, I've got some more questions that came in before the panel. So how do we structure the learning that we're getting out of it? Because, you know, there's so much learning, isn't there? Is there a way that we capture the learnings as we go? Maybe who would like to answer this? Mutsumi, how are we capturing learnings?
So we have like the multiple different ways, I guess, and different, I guess, you know, whether that learning is about the kind of town level learning, or whether is it more about the initiative as a whole. I think Emma talked quite beautifully about the whole kind of like how the towns are rapidly using those learnings. And also we have that, I think Melinda talked about in terms of capturing like learnings through the most significant change and most significant learning process. But we also have do things like impact log and learning logs, which are kind of more ongoing for us. So that actually is kind of really interesting and tricky part of our role, Melinda and Jess and I, as evaluators. Like when we attend team meetings, for example, for the with TACSI, Faithful and Clear Horizon, we also take some like evaluative notes as well. So we are both at the same time attendees of the meeting, and we try to contribute, in the meeting as attendees do, but at the same time we're taking notes and making, I guess, evaluative, like analytical kind of part of it as well. So that we do that, we attend meetings, we take notes, and we then kind of that feeds into the process evaluation, or periodic evaluation. Have I missed anything?
Melinda,
Jess?
what about the principals? Do they play a role in systematizing the learnings?
They do, yeah. So with our impact and learning logs, we have the option to tie them to one of our 4 principles that I mentioned before. So if you're seeing an instance of impact or learning, whether at the town level or across the support team, we can connect that to our principles. So as a part of our process evaluation moving forward, not only the quick survey around principle.
Oops, we've lost you. Yeah.
Alignment and divergence.
You're breaking up a bit, Melinda. Might move on to another question. A final question from before the panel. How have the community been involved in actually designing the evaluation?
How are our principals? Sorry, I've got a bit of a delay. Sorry.
No worries. We're moving on to another question, which is, how have the community been involved in designing the evaluation? And that is to note that in the first year, the community was still being selected. So in the beginning, there wasn't, well, let's find out, was the community involved in designing the evaluation? And there's 2 levels to that, aren't there? There's the community level one and the initiative. So let's take, Melinda, maybe you could talk about the initiative level.
Sure. So I'd say probably the primary way, and Jess, please do jump in. I know you're the host here, but is feedback and engagement around the design of the initiative level theory of change.
Yeah.
So towns, support team and towns played an active role in just helping us get clear on what is our logic here. What sort of outcomes are we trying to achieve, and how do those stagger across the years? And so I'd say that their input and buy-in to the theory of change was really important in terms of building out a MEL framework around that. Other ways at the initiative level, I'd say the process evaluation piece is huge. Deep engagement from towns and support team in that yearly exercise, and then of course the intention setting. So I would say, Jess, that those are the sort of primary ways that towns are involved at the initiative level.
I realized that I was there before any of you 5 were there. I was there at the beginning. So right at the beginning, the principles were co-developed, and they were developed with towns, and they form a really strong anchor in the evaluation, in the process evaluation. So they were done together. Well, they were originally drafted and then refined at the retreat. Oh, you were there, Mutsumi, for that, weren't you? And you would have been there, Emma, when we redid them, yeah. So the community was involved in setting the principles, which is one of the key frameworks we use. So there's that as well. But I guess at a high level, the overarching framework wasn't developed with community involved because they weren't there at that point. But it has been refined with community input. But at the community level, as you can see, we're not even leading it. So it's held and managed and designed by the communities themselves. So it's a bit different that way. Yeah, very different. Would anybody want to add into that, Emma?
Yeah, I was just going to add right back at the very beginning, it got put to us, to be successful in this, what would you have to or hope to see? And so community went away, and we put forwards all the ideas or all the things that we thought, if you got were successful with this 10 years of funding, you should be able to show, or yeah, there should be some way that it's evidenced at the end of this. So when they came up with the original, what you would need to see at the end of it, that was all pretty much designed by community. And I feel like every sort of 12 months at least, we would be interviewed by Clear Horizons, just to sort of say what's working, what's not working, what would you like to see changed. So we then have the opportunity to speak in that space too. And I feel like with the theory of change, that was something that has changed since that first 12 months, because a lot of the examples in the early days were around car parks and things that maybe weren't as relevant to us when we were learning about evaluation. And as we've progressed further into it, we're now pulling out examples from our own communities or from our own work. And that's been it's been really, really valuable for us to really understand probably more deeply what we're doing in that space, because it's quite relevant to where we're at.
Thank you so much. So that is the questions that we got beforehand, I believe. So we'll just have a quick look at the Q&A that's come in, and we have another 6 minutes left, so let's make this snappy. So I think we've answered how frequently you're feeding learning back, so I think we've answered that one. It's such a big project. What are some of the barriers faced in the setup of the MELD frameworks, and how did you overcome them? Yeah, I mean, I'll briefly just say that, you know, we decided to go slowly. We called it slow cooked evaluation. We thought we shouldn't jump in and build a big evaluation framework straight away. So that was really nice. We gave ourselves time, and we started just with the principles. Yeah, so that's unusual. I'd never done that before. So that means one of the things is it's very hard to build an evaluation framework when the thing itself doesn't yet exist. But let me add into Melinda, have you got any comments about how do you build an evaluation framework for something so big and so long term?
And I think the added complexity to that is working alongside TACSI and the social innovation space and folks where the room for emergence is so important. And so it's how do we build a framework to help guide over the next 10 years, but within that, how do we build in plenty of room for emergence and pivoting and new ideas? So I think I would just go back to what I said before about really building from social conditions, building from ideas around culture change enablers, because once we get clear on the different conditions that need to exist and how we design and evaluate around that, there's plenty of room within that to pivot as, you know, COVID or as flooding or as, you know, community change happens. Planning a framework that will adapt as the needs adapt and the issues change, but still allow us to evaluate at those kind of root level issues. Mutsumi, these are the kind of chats we love to have. I know you've got something to say.
Yeah, and also that, like, I think for MELD framework to be kind of, you know, be able to really withstand time and also at the same time be emergent, it's important that, as you say, you know, it needs to be flexible. It needs to like be, you know, be able to actually, you know, sail through different, I guess, contextual changes and things like changes in context, changes in lots of different things. And I think part of that is, again, really developing that sustainable capability in towns, so that when things do change and when, you know, in down the future, for example, you know, communities can actually make readjustments and things like that. And we've already got like, as Emma was mentioning about it, I got like example, like communities are already bringing in tools and different things that communities are developing. So we're definitely seeing that, like, so they communities are able to develop their own tools. As things change, they will be able to continue making those tools as well.
And I think that that's supported by like a set of underlying tools that are shared across towns. So impact learning logs, MSCs once a year, that yes, flexible in our tools and our approaches, but also ensuring that there's some, I don't know if uniform is the right word, but that towns are collecting certain types of stories and numbers in the same way, so that it, 2 years time, 5 years time, 10 years time, we can look across all of the impact learning logs together, kind of pull out those big picture learning. So it's about like emergence and flexibility, but also standardizing where possible.
And I understand that, the next phase we'll be heading towards is developing a shared measurement framework of quantitative indicators as well. So we've got more to come. Maybe we'll come back and chat to you all in a couple of years and tell you how that part of the framework is going, because we're still at the beginning. But with that, I think we've run out of time, and I've had a lovely time reconnecting with you all, and I hope our listeners have enjoyed this chat as well. It was unscripted. This was us really having a chat about where things are. And I'm so grateful. I know there are people online there's somebody from Delhi who said they're having a great time here. So we can't see you all, but it's fantastic that you're here to join our conversation. I'd just like to really thank all the panelists today for coming along with such goodwill. And thanks so much, Emma, for bringing the real live perspective. It makes so much difference. And to Jess for your amazing work. And of course, the evaluators, Clear Horizon. Okay, and with that, we might call it a day and hope to see you again on one of our future webinars. And there are some courses coming up. If you're interested in learning more, I believe we have Most Significant Change course coming up, and we have the place-based approaches. And we also have one on how you use theory of change across design cycle, which is very tailored to this sort of innovation context. So come along and join us at the Academy. And with that, better say goodbye, farewell, have a lovely day.